I had an ability, a gift from God, and I wanted to exploit it. I had to prove something to myself. I wanted to be the best that I possibly can. When you see an open field, the first thing you see is, oh my God, I hope I don't get caught.
How hard do you think it's going to be to say goodbye?
I think it probably the hardest thing I've ever had to do.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Roy Firestone, and this is an up-close special. He wasn't big by football standards, 5'10", 202 pounds. But Walter Payton, who in 13 years missed only one game, was one of the roughest, toughest competitors who ever lived. No man ever carried the ball more often and for more yardage than Sweetness, but that's just dry stats. He embodied the essence of football. Fight for every yard, fight every day, take nothing for granted. On this program, we'll hear in his own words why we should never take him for granted.
Once you make it up in your mind and in your heart that you want to accomplish something or you want to do something in life, and you dedicate yourself to that, and you won't let yourself accept anything but that, then that's where the drive comes from. That's where the determination and all the hard work, because I felt that I had an ability, a gift from God, and I wanted to exploit it, not for myself, but just to do it because I had it. It was something that was given to me, and it was given to me for a reason, and I just wanted to utilize it the best of my ability.
What I admired about Walter was his competitive spirit. Every time I saw him play, whether it was the first play or if it was a first run or if it was a 30th run, it was always the same speed, the same effort, the same determination. I mean, it was a guy that he was just determined to be the best.
You know, I came from as people say, small school that people will kind of scratch their heads about, say, well, they play pretty good football, but if they get into the professional ranks, they may not be able to hold what they're doing. So I had something to prove there. When I came in, I already had something to prove, because people, you know, they had doubts in their mind. Then we showed that we could play with anybody, and after that, I had to prove something to myself. I wanted to be the best that I possibly can, not the best that a former Jim Brown was, or a former Gale Sears, or guys before me. I don't want to reach their level. I want to reach what my level is. If it's below that or beyond that, that's what I'm shooting for.
First of all, before 80% of the game this year, I watched Walter Payton film, and one thing I noticed about him is no matter what, he kept his feet moving. He kept his feet moving, and it would never stop, and I tried to incorporate that into my game, and it really helped me a whole lot. And he was just an overachiever. He was a small guy. Like I said, wasn't the fastest guy, but he made you work to tackle him.
It's funny. I don't think it's running. It's a feeling that you get when you're out there and you're making cuts, or you're making moves, or you're catching passes, or you're just out there. It's sort of like performing, like a ballet or something. The thing I love most about football, and it might seem that it's contradicting itself simply because my job is to evade people and to get the ball down the field, but I enjoy the contact. When somebody's coming up to hit you, if you, in terms, take the lick, the next time he comes in, he's going to say, well, I'm going to hit him a little bit harder, or I'm going to really draw back and get a shot at him. So what you do is you change that by, instead of being hit, you just meet the blow. You know, the law of physics tells you that an object standing still, another object coming, the one that's standing still is going to take the brunt of the blow. Right. But if you guys meet, it's the one who goes the fastest, or the one who's better conditioned, is going to inflict the most pain.
You know, I call Walter a second and third effort football player, running back. You know, because, you know, you hit him, if you don't wrap him up, well, he's going to break it. And he just had that desire to keep going all the time. And as Ricky said, it wasn't the fastest, wasn't the quickest, but, you know, if you didn't hit him, he can go.
When you see an open field, the first thing you see is, oh my God, I hope I don't get caught. That's the first thing that comes in your mind.
When you do that little stutter step, is there a kind of posture in that? I mean, I never noticed it until maybe the last 3-4 years. There's almost kind of an attitude as much as it's a step. I don't know if you agree with that.
I don't think it's an attitude. I think it's a means of survival. In other words, as evolution goes, you learn to adapt certain things to make you survive, and I think that's one of the things I've acquired, simply because when I use that step, what it does for me, it breaks my timing, it breaks my rhythm down, so that the opposing guy that's coming, he can't in other words, when I'm running, he said, well, I'm going to zero him in on ground 2. So I'm coming, and when I get to ground 2, he's got his full head of steam going. But when I take that step, then he has to go, oh my God, I got to recalculate. And so it gives me that edge, because football is a game of angles and seconds. And if you can change the angles, then you got the edge.
When we played them my rookie year, and you know, hearing about Walter Payton, and you know, I was, you know, you were a rookie, you kind of got your own little arrogant thing going. So I mean, I stood on the sidelines to watch him play. I stood up. I said, I'm gonna stand and watch him play. I want to see him really run the football. And I saw him knock out one of our defensive backs. They brought him to the sidelines, and he didn't know his name. I just thought that was the funniest thing that I had ever seen, because they were the same size.
My aggression, instead of going outward and striking back at somebody else, I don't do that. What I use that to kindle a burning desire inside of me that I already have, to fuel it. And it just gives me that sense that I block out everything. My teammates and the people around me, where I'm playing, the weather, pain, and it's you and me.
Last February, when Walter announced his illness, friends and colleagues found it difficult to comprehend that a man that tough, a man who'd overcome so much, might actually succumb to a rare disease.
When I first heard of it, I was shocked, because here I am, I'm like, well, I got this hip thing going, and he has something that makes my hip look like, oh, I just broke a nail. It's just hard to imagine talking about the Chicago Bears and not speaking of them and Walter in the same sentence.
When we return, sweetness was his nickname, but his road to glory was often bittersweet, as our Walter Payton retrospective continues.
Welcome back to our Walter Payton special. I'm Roy Firestone. Walter went to a small school, Jackson State, and he went most of his career playing for inferior teams. In the first 9 seasons of pro ball, his Bear teams went 9 games under 500. And so opposing teams looked to do only one thing when they played Chicago: stop Payton. They couldn't. Not for long, anyway. He ran the way he felt. Every inch, he was out to prove something.
You almost killed yourself getting there. You and your brother Eddie running along the banks of the Pearl River, that white sand, doing it to such a point that anyone who tried to work out with you collapsed in pain and agony, running steps, running hills, putting yourself into the kind of physical condition that was almost superhuman. I mean, you take a look at this guy's thighs, or if you take a look at his arms, even a year and a half removed from the game, you're a man that was a physical specimen that truly unmatched. It was a pride thing, but it was a drive. I want to know if anywhere there was a fear, not necessarily the fear of failure, but the fear of not making the best of what you had.
You always realize that deep back in your mind that you have something, and it's a possibility that it could go on to higher places. And then once you start on that journey, you know, there's always the fear of failure. There's always the fear of something happening to offset what you're shooting for. And with me, I don't think it was any different. I had those feelings also, because once you reach a certain level and you achieve certain things, and you want to go beyond that, it's always frightening, you know, opening another door, going into a different dimension.
There is that driving force, and there always has been, as we said, and we've been saying throughout the show, about being the best. I remember the year you lost the rushing title to O.J., and you broke down and you wept.
Yeah.
You don't see that among professional athletes. Oh, well, I did my best, and but you were like your heart was out on the sleeve.
Well, that's how competitive I am, and you know, it was an opportunity, and I guess at that particular time it was just not in the cards for me, because I ended up twisting my ankle, and I guess everything happens for a reason. And the next year I came out a little bit more determined and a little bit more aggressive, and things happened the way they were supposed to. But like I said, maybe if I'd have won the Russian title that year, maybe it would have changed me to a point where I wouldn't be the person I am now. But like I said, I'm happy that things worked out the way they did.
There's always been a debate about the nickname Sweetness. Did it come because of his sweet running style or his sweet personality? And where did it come? Did it come in college or high school or before that?
It came right before my professional career, when we were playing in the postseason college bowl games. And a couple of guys, Reeve Sori, who was going with the Bears, and Bob Avellini, and well, at that particular time, you know, it was like as the times go, there are certain sayings like "all right," and at that particular time, the saying was, "Oh, how sweet it is! Oh, that's
How sweet it is.
So some of the moves that I would make in practice and kidding around, people would say, that was a sweet move." And after we got through practicing, we'd go in to the hotels and see me walking around in the lobby, and for lack of anything else to call, they think about the move. Hey, sweetness, and then
There is a couple of theories about why Walter Payton doesn't return back to Columbia, Mississippi, or very often get back home. One is your dad. Your dad died tragically in jail after being picked up on a drunk driving charge. I think he had a stroke or
a brain hemorrhage.
Brain hemorrhage. That you always quietly resented, stated or unstated, the racism there, that you felt that it cost your father his life. True?
No, I think the reason that it happened, well, it cost him his life, was because it was a small town and people were not aware as to certain things. Like when you have a brain hemorrhage, what it does, the first thing that goes is your motor skills, and it makes you appear to be as if that you're intoxicated. But if someone at that particular time would have known that and been more advanced as far as their technology and procedures, they probably would have knew that. But because of that, that was it. It wasn't a case of racism or whatever thing. It was just a small town atmosphere with people who just really didn't know.
Why don't you get back then?
Well, my mom moved away from Columbia. She lives in Jackson, and she's the light of my life, and so that's where it ends now.
Up next, the field of dreams off the field. Walter Payton's other success stories as our Walter Payton retrospective continues.
Welcome back. You look back at the ledger of his life and you're sure of one thing. Walter Payton would have been a success in anything he did, and he did many things away from football. He was an entrepreneur. He owned a race car, restaurants, dozens of enterprises. I talked to him about his view of success.
Yeah, football, life, and business, they're so closely related. It's unbelievable. I can remember we're in the same situations when I was playing with the Bears. We had just lost to the Houston Oilers 40-0. We had to win the last 7 games to even think about getting into the playoffs. And believe it or not, we did. We won all 7 games. We got to the playoffs. And that's a lesson, because even though you're down, don't give up, because once you submit, then anything can happen to you. But if you keep on fighting and you'll keep your focus, you can always win. And that's the key thing. Don't ever give up.
There's a story that when you were in first grade, you were in line, a little kid, and you couldn't stand the idea. You had to wait in line.
Yeah.
Come on, let's go already, let's go. And finally you started to run ahead of the line, and the big boys were chasing you to try to calm you down, and you gave them the little stutter step.
Yeah.
And that's where the stutter step was born, right? Is that true?
Well, it didn't come into prominence until the NFL.
Yeah, but that was the beginning, huh?
You know, I'm standing in line, you know, as a kid in first grade, you know, certain things, they don't compute, you know. You have to go to school. At a certain time, you got to be there, and you got to do everything they ask you to do. And then once it comes quitting time, it's like, hey, it's quitting time. I'm ready to go home. But you have to walk in line until you kick off the school grounds, and then you go. And I didn't see the sense in, you know, why did I have to stay in line? I'm like, hey, school is out. So I'm in line, so I get out of line, and she tells me to get back in line, and I said no. And then I started running, and the other kids were trying to trip me, and then guys were trying to get me and stop me. Didn't work. I got home, but they caught me the next day because I had to go back to school.
See, here's what I'm trying to say about Walter. He's so competitive. There's so much drive, and it's always been there. You enter the Soul Train dancing contest. This is a few years back, and you did a great job, and everyone's going, wow, Walter can really dance. And you were angry at yourself because you felt you should have won it instead of take second place. And you would later say, if I would have had a better dance partner, we would have won it, right?
Well,
Come on now.
She probably saying the same thing, too. If she'd had a better dance partner, she'd have won.
You could have been anything you wanted, really, truly.
Well, you know, that's true in anybody. It's just a matter of the frame of mind that you're in, and if you can visualize what you want to do, you can do it. And I just so happened that football was something that was close to me, that I grew up with, and I decided that I was going to do that. I felt if it had been basketball, if the town that I grew up in would have been more of a basketball town, then I'd probably been a basketball player.
Same goes for ownership, too, in the NFL?
Yes.
You think that you probably will be the first black owner?
I hope so.
Or part owner?
I can see myself as that, and like I said, if you can visualize it, then it's possible. I feel that I have something to bring to the table. I have a lot of new ideas, innovating ideas. I've played the game of football. I know what the players are thinking. I've been there for 13 years, and that's my approach. As far as financing, the financing is there. It's no problem with that either. But that's the reason that I'm doing it is because I feel that I can change some things and make football a lot better.
When we return, the poignant and ironic words from Walter Payton. Why saying goodbye was never easy.
I think it probably be the hardest thing I've ever had to do.
Welcome back to our up-close primetime retrospective on the life of Walter Payton. I'm Roy Firestone. In 1977, Walter Payton carried the football 40 times for 275 yards, an NFL single-game record. He was a devastating blocker, and his nearly 500 pass receptions was an NFL record for backs when he retired. Once, he even played quarterback for the Bears. He was intense and fiery, but it belied his true personality, a playful kid who never wanted to grow old.
Right now, I feel like a young kid again, and as long as I have these young guys pushing me, I'm having fun at it. I might be here for a while.
Are you still running the hill in front of your house?
Still running the hill, doing some other things that almost kill me, but it's still a great time.
I think that's the key for you. Incredible shape that you keep yourself in. Keeps the season going.
I think that helps, Roy, but I think the key thing is keeping a young mind or a young perspective, and the way you think is the way you are. And things that I enjoyed doing as a kid, I still enjoy doing, so I think if that's any indication that I've kind of slowed down the times of evolution and I've put it into a neutral stage at this point. When you go into to a season, you don't look at the first game that you're involved in, you look at the long haul. That's 16 games, and that means you got to be ready to perform for each game. And the only way that you can be able to perform is that you condition and prepare yourself prior to the season, because once the season starts, you start working on the little final points of the game in terms of polishing it so that you get your timing down, you get the right amount of nourishment, and also you have to work out on the weights.
I remember covering you all those years. It was one of the things you used to do. You used to do the hill.
Yes.
Remember that? Where was the hill outside of Chicago? Right near your neighborhood, right?
Well, the hill, it started in Mississippi when we were running the levees that would keep the Pearl River from flooding, which it didn't do a very good job, but we still use that. Huh. And then I found one in Arlington Heights, which is not too far from my home, and it was almost 80 yards in length, and it was at a 45-degree angle.
Virtually straight up.
Yes.
How many times would you run that hill?
Tell you how difficult it was and how steep it was. The first time that we found the hill and we ran it, we could only do 2 before we retired. By the time the training was done and we were ready to go to training camp, we were doing 25.
Ooh, incredible.
Yeah.
Where and when, Walter, did you learn the importance of preparation? I mean, was it before you got into football?
Well, not really. In terms of getting ready, conditioning, and everything else, my second year with the Chicago Bears, it came apparent to me that training and conditioning was the most important thing. Getting yourself prepared physically and mentally so that when you do go into training camp, when they start throwing these complex plays at you and all these different options that you do when a defense does something, you can concentrate on that and not have to worry about your physical conditioning. And I developed a training program that was geared around what you do on the football field.
In 1987, before Walter Payton quit the game, I talked to him about saying goodbye to the thing he loved most to do in the world, run with the football. Believe me, the thought of leaving before his time really bothered him.
How hard do you think it's going to be to say goodbye?
I don't know. I think it probably be the hardest thing I've ever had to do, simply because I've done this the longest in my life, and every year, I start training, and it's sort of like an obsession that I have with pain. In other words, in getting myself in the best type of shape that I can be in, and knowing mentally that I'm there, I have arrived there, and for a common goal to get back into training camp, to get back into the season. But then to say goodbye to that, it'd probably be hard. I'd probably, right now I'm channeling my efforts in other directions to kind of lessen the effect or the impact, but it's going to be hard. And I probably won't be the same person for a while, simply because you go through those those stages.
You think, like Dr. J, there should be a farewell Walter tour?
For me, I don't think it's necessary, but I think for the fans that have endured the bad years, the good years, the cold weather, the hot, I think maybe it will be good for them because I know how it is. When I receive something, it just makes me feel good, but when I give something, it makes me feel even better. And I feel that type of vibration coming from the people.
When he finally quit in 1987, Walter Payton was the all-time leading rusher in the NFL, all-time ball carrier as well, and at the time, only one touchdown shy of Jim Brown's touchdown record. Yet there was something that gnawed at him. He felt incomplete. He didn't like the way he made his exit.
I guess ultimately it ends with the portrait of you on the sideline with your hands on your face in a very emotional, despondent kind of farewell. Do you feel that in some ways you disappointed yourself in the way you said goodbye to this crowd?
Not at all. You know, I'm not very good at goodbyes. I've always either, when in parting, just wanted, it's a look or a touch or a feeling that you give people as opposed to words, because you know you can't find the right words to really describe what you're feeling. But if you generate a flow or feeling from you just by a look or a touch, then they realize and they feel that. Unfortunately, at that point, I couldn't touch everybody in the stands, or everyone couldn't get as close to me as possible to see what I was feeling and what I was trying to say in my face.
What do you think you were feeling?
Disappointment, joy, anxiety, relief.
Fear? Any?
No fear. I guess it was basically one of the points of not being associated with it anymore and being on the outside looking in.
We'll return with some final thoughts on Walter Payton after this.
Welcome back to our Walter Payton retrospective. I'm Roy Firestone. He was a beautiful athlete to watch, graceful and fluid one minute, a pile-driving battering ram the next. Sweetness to his friends, held in shoulder pads for others. When he encountered his greatest challenge as a man, a rare liver disease, he battled it with his trademark toughness. He didn't accept black market organs, and he could have. He kept his dignity, his humor, and his integrity. I had the distinct pleasure of working with Walter Payton in many corporate appearances, and I can tell you firsthand he was much more impressive a man than any captain of industry, any CEO of any multinational company. He took life on in his own way, and he attacked it as he attacked the defenders. That was his legacy. He was grit, heart, joy, and utter passion in everything he did, and in everybody he met. Matt Millen once said that watching Walter Payton on the sideline during a game was a real pleasure. It was an honor, he said, just to tackle him. Well, I felt an honor just to know him. Thanks for watching. I'm Roy Firestone. Good night.
Up Close is a presentation of ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports. Proud to be celebrating our 20th anniversary. For more, log on to ESPN.com, part of the Go Network, go.com.